It started with a mistake. Or maybe fate just had a twisted sense of humor that night. I was sitting alone at the edge of the rooftop lounge, the kind of place where the city hums low and the skyline feels like it's leaning in to listen. The night was warm, almost sticky with the kind of humidity that clings to your skin like a memory you can't shake. I'd claimed the corner booth hours ago, half hoping to be left alone, half daring the universe to send me something or someone. I wasn't even sure which I wanted more. And then he sat down. Not in the empty seat across from me. That would have made sense. That would have given us distance, a polite boundary. No, he slid into the spot right next to me, close enough that his thigh brushed mine under the table, close enough that I caught the scent of cedarwood and something darker, something like trouble. He looked over, realizing it only a second too late. His eyes widened just a little, then narrowed in amusement. "Oh," he said, with the smoothness of a man who's either very lucky or very used to fixing his mistakes. "I thought this table was empty." I didn't move, didn't smile, just raised an eyebrow and said, "Clearly." But I didn't tell him to leave. There was something about his voice, low and warm like whiskey just poured. His shirt was still clinging to his chest from the heat outside. A few buttons undone like he didn't care, or wanted someone to notice. And his confidence wasn't arrogant. It was quiet, almost challenging, like he was wondering what I'd do if he stayed. He ordered a drink without asking if he could, and I let him. "What are you drinking?" he asked, turning to face me fully now, his knee grazing mine again, this time slower, deliberate. There was no apology in the way he looked at me. "Gin." "Neat," I replied, not breaking eye contact. "Classy," he said, smiling like he'd just discovered a secret. We sipped in silence for a while, our shoulders barely touching. But the space between us? Charged. Like the air before lightning strikes. I could feel it, that slow creeping awareness that something had shifted, that this wasn't going to be a forgettable night. "Let me guess," he murmured eventually, leaning closer. "You're here alone but not lonely." That made me smile. A slow, sly smile that curled before I could stop it. "You're good at reading people," I said. "Is that your thing?" He tilted his head. "Only when they're trying not to be seen." Something in me clenched, not out of fear but recognition. It had been a long time since someone had looked through me instead of at me, and I hated how much I liked it. The DJ changed the song. A deep, sultry beat filled the air like a pulse. Around us, couples pressed closer, laughter spilling like wine. But we stayed still, suspended in that tension, that not quite touching place that felt more dangerous than anything physical. "I'll move if you want," he said, his voice lower now, almost a whisper. "But I'm hoping you don't." I should have told him to go. Should have rolled my eyes and returned to my drink, to the safety of solitude. Instead I looked at him, really looked, and said, "Stay." And just like that, the night rewrote itself. He didn't thank me for letting him stay. He just smiled, that slow, unreadable smile that said he knew exactly what he was doing. And I hated how quickly my body responded to it. We didn't talk for a while. We just sat, side by side, sharing the kind of silence that vibrates more than it soothes. His presence was like static, subtle, but impossible to ignore. Every brush of his knee against mine felt intentional. Every breath he took a little too close to my neck. I stole glances. The curve of his jaw, the way he held his glass with fingertips that looked like they knew how to handle secrets. He wasn't classically handsome, not in a cover model way. But there was something raw about him. Unfinished. Like he wasn't trying to be anything other than exactly what he was. And that was infinitely more dangerous. "What brought you here tonight?" he asked eventually, his voice soft enough to feel private. I could have lied. Said something casual. Said I was meeting friends. But something about him disarmed me. "Boredom," I confessed. "Restlessness." He nodded like he understood, and I think he did. "You?" I asked. He leaned closer, elbow on the table, voice dropped to a hush. I followed a feeling. I blinked. What kind of feeling? He turned to me fully now, so close I could feel the heat off his skin. The kind that says something unforgettable might happen if you sit in the wrong seat. God. The way he said it, not cocky, not desperate. Just truth. Like the night had whispered it to him. And maybe it had. "You always chase those kinds of feelings?" I asked, pretending to sip my drink just to cool the burn rising in my throat. Only when the stakes feel high. I didn't ask what the stakes were. I already knew. He shifted in his seat slightly, facing me more, his leg pressing against mine now. No more accidental touches. His fingers tapped the rim of his glass, restless, controlled. I shouldn't be doing this, I said before I could stop myself. He looked amused but not surprised. Doing what? Entertaining this, whatever this is. He leaned in just enough for his breath to ghost across my collarbone. Then stop me. I didn't. I couldn't. And that's when I realized this wasn't just flirtation. It was a game. Slow, dangerous, intimate. A kind of striptease of the mind, where every question, every pause, every half-smile peeled something back. He reached out almost carelessly and brushed something from my shoulder. Invisible lint, or maybe just an excuse to touch me. His fingers lingered. Not long enough to call attention, but enough to feel the shiver run down my spine. I don't even know your name, I murmured. He smiled. That's the least important part right now. He was right. The name wouldn't matter. What mattered was this feeling, this aching, smoldering pull between us. Like we were suspended in that fragile moment right before something tips over. Something you can't undo. And just as I was about to lean in to surrender something small but irreversible, he said it. Can I tell you a secret? I looked up at him, heart skipping like a record. Only if it's one you've never told anyone else. He smiled, not playful this time. Not flirty. Just honest. It's about a fantasy. My breath caught. And that's when everything changed. There was a shift in the air, subtle but unmistakable. The kind of silence that settles right before something important is said. Or before someone kisses you just a second too soon. He leaned in closer, not to touch, not yet, but to speak. And when he did, his voice dropped so low it felt like it brushed against my skin. I've had this fantasy, he said. For years. One I've never told anyone because it always felt a little too real. A little too risky. I could feel my pulse in my throat. You're telling me now? I asked, half whisper, half dare. He looked at me, serious now. Like this wasn't just some line. Like something inside him was opening without permission. Because tonight feels like it doesn't follow the rules, he said. Like it exists outside consequences. He paused. And then? It involves two women. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Not crude. Not graphic. Just a door cracked open. And I could feel myself inching toward it, even though I should have walked away. I didn't speak. I just looked at him. Letting him know I was listening. Really listening. His eyes searched mine, waiting for disgust, curiosity, or some reaction I hadn't even decided on yet. There's something about watching two women together, he continued, slower now, more careful. The way they understand each other's bodies. The softness. The rhythm. It's not about control. It's about witnessing something electric. I swallowed hard, trying to stay still even as my thoughts raced. The image slipped into my mind before I could block it. Skin against skin, breath tangled with breath. A woman's hand sliding where only instinct would guide it. The intimacy of it. The beauty. And suddenly I realized I wasn't shocked. I wasn't judging. I was intrigued. More than that. I felt something twist deep inside me. A warmth. A curiosity I hadn't let myself feel in years. Have you ever? I began but stopped myself. He smiled gently. No. Not really. Not the way I've imagined it. But the way you looked at me just now tells me maybe I'm not the only one. I bit my lip, caught. He didn't push. He didn't gloat. He just waited, patient, present, dangerous in the quietest way. And I realized something then. This wasn't about the fantasy. It was about trust. About sharing something private, delicate, and seeing if the other person would hold it or run from it. I held it. You're not wrong, I said finally, my voice lower than I meant it to be. There's something about the idea that feels honest. He nodded. It's not about possession. It's about surrender. About being in the room when everything falls away and only feeling remains. My skin prickled. We weren't touching. But it felt like we were. The fantasy hung between us, not as a proposition, but a shared secret. Something that tied us together now, silently, permanently. You're dangerous, I whispered. He smiled. Only if you want me to be. And just like that, the night deepened. The air grew heavier. And I knew, this wasn't just a flirtation anymore. It was an invitation. After his confession, we both went quiet, but not in an awkward way. It was that thick electric silence that only happens when two people have just crossed an invisible line together. A line you don't come back from. Something had shifted between us and we both felt it. Not just in the way we looked at each other now, but in how close we were sitting. How we both pretended not to notice that our legs had aligned perfectly under the table. That our shoulders were brushing lightly, but with a charge that felt anything but accidental. He didn't speak. Instead, he ran a single fingertip around the edge of his glass. Slowly, thoughtfully. And I watched it, a little too long, wondering what it would feel like if that same finger traced my collarbone instead. Or the small of my back. He caught me watching and smiled. "You keep looking at my hands," he said. I blushed. I actually blushed. "And?" I challenged, trying not to smile back. "They're just hands," he said, holding one up, fingers relaxed. "But I've been told they give me away." I tilted my head. "Give you away how?" He leaned in slowly as if approaching a secret. "That I don't touch unless I mean it. That when I do it's never casual." Something fluttered deep in my stomach. Not just arousal. Something darker, deeper. A longing that had been sleeping for too long, and was now wide awake and stretching under my skin. He looked at me differently now. Not like a stranger across the table, but like someone who had already unwrapped something private. Like he was allowed to look. "Do you touch like that often?" I asked, my voice lower than I intended. "Only when someone makes it hard not to." God. The way he said it, no arrogance, just pure intention, made me want to lean in. To press against him, to feel if his breath matched mine. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I reached for my drink. And so did he. Our fingers grazed. Barely. But it was like striking a match. That single, innocent contact sent a bolt straight through me. I looked up at him, and this time there was no distance in his eyes. He saw me. Entirely. And for a split second, the entire world outside that rooftop lounge disappeared. There were no other patrons. No skyline. No DJ. Just the space between us, humming like a wire about to snap. "I shouldn't be feeling this," I whispered. He didn't ask what this was. He didn't need to. "You feel safe?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Then let it happen." It was terrifying and thrilling how easy that sounded. So I did. I let it happen. I let my knee press into his. I let my hand rest just a little too close to his on the table. I let the silence stretch and simmer, and when he turned to me, not suddenly but with a slow inevitability, I let my breath catch, because I knew what was coming next. He reached out just barely and brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. His knuckles grazed my cheek, and even though it wasn't a kiss, it felt worse. More dangerous, because it was a promise. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for what came after. I should have kissed him. The moment was there, balanced, trembling, and I felt it pass between us like a shared breath. But I didn't move. Neither did he. Maybe we both understood that the almost was more powerful than the act itself. His fingers lingered near my jaw, not quite touching now, like they were remembering the shape of me. The softness of that single graze behind my ear had already ignited something low and steady in my core. The kind of heat that doesn't flare, it smolders. Quiet. Dangerous. He dropped his hand slowly, his gaze following it down, like he'd just touched fire and wasn't ready to admit he'd burned himself. "I have a room here," he said suddenly. The words were careful, measured. Not a demand, not even a suggestion. Just a fact placed gently between us. I looked at him. He wasn't trying to seduce me anymore. He didn't have to. He was giving me a door. And he was waiting to see if I'd walk through it. I didn't answer right away. I turned slightly, leaning back just enough to feel the night air against my throat. The city pulsed below us, and I realized how far away everything felt. My routine, my expectations, my rules. All of it. "I haven't done anything like this before," I said. "Neither have I," he replied, and I believed him. Not because he hadn't had flings or moments like this, but because this, whatever this was, felt different. There was a current running beneath our conversation, something neither of us wanted to name yet. A mix of curiosity, danger, longing, and something I wasn't ready to admit out loud. He shifted closer. Just enough that our bodies aligned. I could feel his thigh next to mine, the warmth of his arm brushing mine, his breath skimming the space just under my jaw. "Tell me what you're thinking," he murmured. I didn't know how to answer that, because what I was thinking wasn't about facts or logic. It was about feeling. I was thinking about what his hands would feel like against my back, about the sound of his voice in the dark, about the way I might look at myself in the mirror tomorrow and not recognize the version of me who said yes. I was thinking about her, not someone specific, just the possibility. His fantasy, the one he confessed earlier. I kept seeing it in flashes. Another woman's gaze meeting mine, her body warm and familiar beside mine. The idea had never lived this vividly in my imagination before. But now it had a shape, a presence. I could feel him watching me closely, waiting to see if I'd retreat or lean in. So I said it, barely above a whisper. "What if I'm curious about her too?" His breath caught. He looked at me differently now, not with hunger but reverence. Like I just handed him something fragile and rare. "You're not afraid?" he asked. "I'm terrified," I said. "But also not." A long pause. Then softly, "Come upstairs with me. Just to talk. Just to be somewhere quieter." I nodded. Once. And that was it. No dramatic kiss. No rushing heartbeat as we fled the scene. Just two people standing slowly, quietly, brushing against each other as we walked toward the elevator. His hand on the small of my back, light but steady. Every step felt like a decision. Every breath a surrender. And as the elevator doors slid closed, sealing us off from the noise of the world, I realized something. It wasn't the fantasy that was pulling me in. It was the freedom of it. The elevator ride was quiet, but not empty. We stood close, not touching, but with a gravity between us that felt impossible to ignore. My heart was pounding, but not with fear. It was anticipation, like standing on the edge of a secret. He didn't look at me, not because he wasn't interested, but because he was. He was giving me space, letting me make the choice without pressure. And that restraint, that subtle, respectful tension, it undid me. When the doors opened on the 15th floor, I followed him out without a word. The hallway was dimly lit, carpeted in silence. I noticed the way his shoulders moved beneath his shirt, the slight tension in his hand as he slid the keycard into the door. He was composed, but I could feel the pulse of his nerves too. The door clicked open. And just like that, we were inside. His room was modern, simple. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a low couch, a king-size bed made too neatly to feel lived in. There was something surreal about stepping into it with him. Like entering a story I wasn't supposed to be in, but didn't want to leave. He didn't speak. He walked to the window, pulling back the curtain slightly, revealing the city lights glowing like scattered stars. I stood in the doorway, unsure for a moment what to do with myself. And then, as if sensing my hesitation, he turned. "You can sit. Or stand. Or leave," he said softly. "Nothing happens unless you want it to." It was disarming how gentle he was. He wasn't trying to seduce me anymore. He was inviting me to feel safe. And somehow that made everything even more charged. I walked slowly to the edge of the bed, sitting without fully sinking in. My dress had ridden up slightly, and I crossed one leg over the other, feeling the fabric shift against my skin. He noticed, of course he did, but he didn't stare. He just smiled. And then he asked a question that completely shattered the rules. "What's your fantasy?" I blinked. I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't even sure how to answer. But the words came out quiet but clear. "I've always wondered what it would feel like to be seen, really seen, by someone who doesn't ask me to explain it." He didn't move. He didn't pounce. He just nodded and slowly, without a word, walked over to me. And then he knelt. Right there, on the floor in front of me. Not in a dramatic way. In a grounded, intimate way, like he wanted to meet me at eye level, like he wanted me to know this wasn't about control. He reached up, gently resting his hands on my knees. I didn't flinch. I didn't pull back. I leaned in. The contact was subtle, warm palms through thin fabric, the softness of his thumbs grazing in slow circles. He looked up at me like I was a question he'd been waiting his whole life to ask. "Still feel safe?" he whispered. I nodded. But then instead of answering, I reached out and touched his face. Just a brush, my fingertips grazing the line of his jaw, feeling the slight stubble, the heat beneath his skin. You don't have to prove anything, I said. He closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them again, something had changed. There was no longer a line between us, just a door. And I had already stepped through. His hands were still on my knees, warm, steady, grounding. I could feel the heat of him even through the fabric of my dress. And yet, nothing about it felt rushed. There was no urgency in his touch, no hunger in his posture. Only presence. Complete, undeniable presence. He was watching me like he was trying to memorize something. Like he knew this moment, right here in the quiet, in the stillness, was the beginning of something he didn't want to break. I should have felt nervous. Instead I felt calm. Charged, yes. A live wire stretched through every inch of me. But calm in the way you feel just before surrendering to a wave, knowing you won't drown, not this time. May I? He asked, voice so soft I almost missed it. I nodded, but even that felt like too much. So I whispered it. Yes. He shifted his hands slightly, moving them to my thighs. His thumbs tracing slow lines up and down, never too far, never too bold. The way he touched me wasn't about possession. It was reverent, like he was asking permission with every breath. And then finally he kissed me, but not where I expected. He leaned in and pressed his lips to the inside of my knee. That one kiss undid me. My breath hitched. My fingers clenched around the edge of the bed. My skin, already humming, lit up like it had been waiting years to be seen like this. He didn't move fast, just slowly kissed his way along my thigh, each kiss like a sentence in a language only our bodies understood. He wasn't rushing toward anything. He was savoring, learning, listening. I had to close my eyes, because it was too much. The way he explored me like a secret, the way his mouth made me forget every room I'd ever been in before this one. He stayed low, never reaching too high, never pushing the moment. He was reading my reactions like music, adjusting his rhythm by the hitch of my breath, the tremble in my thighs. And when he finally moved upward, trailing kisses to the edge of my hip bone, I exhaled a sound I hadn't meant to make, soft, aching, full of need. He paused, looked up at me. You okay? He asked, voice thick with restraint. I opened my eyes, met his gaze. I don't think I've ever felt this held. His expression changed then, softened, deepened, like hearing that had done something to him, like he wasn't just touching me anymore. He was letting me touch something inside him. He rose slowly, lifting himself from the floor, and sat beside me again. No words, just breath. And then he leaned in finally and kissed me fully, slow, deliberate, his lips tasting like gin and heat and the kind of longing you only ever feel once. I melted. Into him, into the kiss, into the moment that didn't ask anything of me except that I feel it. And I did. Every inch of it. I woke up to light, soft and golden, slipping through the gaps in the hotel curtains like a whisper. For a moment I didn't move. I just lay there, eyes still half closed, breathing in the quiet warmth of a room that didn't belong to me, and yet felt strangely safe. The sheets were still tangled around my legs. His scent lingered on my skin, subtle, woodsy, mixed with something distinctly him. I could still feel the echo of his hands, not in any one place but everywhere. Like my body remembered him even in the silence. He was sitting by the window, shirtless, barefoot, coffee in hand. The city stretched behind him in soft morning haze, but he wasn't looking at it. He was looking at me. And not with possession. Not with victory. Just with this quiet kind of awe, like he wasn't sure I was real. Hey, he said, voice still raspy with sleep. Hey, I whispered back. For a while we didn't say anything else. The kind of silence that isn't empty but full, with things we didn't need to explain. I sat up, the sheet slipping slightly off my shoulder. He noticed, of course. But he didn't move. He didn't rush to pull me close or start kissing me again. Instead, he asked the question I didn't realize I'd been waiting for. How do you feel? It wasn't small talk. It was the kind of question someone asks when they actually want to know. When they care about the after, not just the during. And somehow that hit me harder than anything from the night before. I feel. I paused, letting the word stretch. Seen. Safe. A little raw. But good. He nodded. Smiled like he just passed a test he didn't know he was taking. I didn't expect this, I said. He sipped his coffee. Neither did I. There was no pressure for what came next. No talk of where this was going or who we were outside that room. And maybe that was what made it beautiful. It wasn't about definition. It was about connection. About two people finding something unexpected and choosing not to run from it. I got up and walked to him barefoot, wrapped in the sheet, and sat on the edge of the window seat beside him. He offered me the mug without asking. I took a sip. Still warm. Still perfect. And in that moment, with the city waking up, with no promises made, no regrets carried, I knew something had changed in me. Not because of what we did, but because of how he made me feel while we did it. And maybe, just maybe, that's what intimacy really is. Not the act,